Come here, baby.
This is what Central Texas should feel like during the winter.
Wow!
Maybe a light jacket and enjoy the outdoors.
Ahoy!
But the weather doesn't always do what it should.
Like from right here.
February 2021, the temperature dropped to single digits.
Just ice.
Homes here in Pflugerville and throughout the state lost power during the winter storm.
As much as we knew to get ready for, we got ready for. Wrapping pipes, trying to bleed faucets, stuff like that.
Stuff Joe Galvan and his family knew well. They had extra training.
But in Iraq, you do a little bit of everything.
But even here, training goes so far.
It was really terrifying.
The house hit 40 degrees on day 1. On day 2, the family went to a friend's home, a home without water. Being without water was safer for Joe than being without power.
Because I had insulin that I had to try to transport.
Insulin requires refrigeration. A Texas Department of State Health Services report shows 246 people died due to the storm, 25 people because their medical equipment did not have power. 161 mothers, fathers, children, grandparents froze to death. The power was purposefully cut. Too much demand and not enough power from the plants to put on the grid.
Feels like we're just waiting for the next one. Horrifying to think how many more people are going to die because of inaction.
Lawmakers had the chance to fix the power grid more than a decade ago. A deadly storm hit in February 2011 left millions without power for days. This federal report recommended weatherization standards. Lawmakers didn't listen. No enforcement.
Weak oversight.
This time, the storm hit as the 87th legislative session began.
Poor communication.
Quickly, blame went all around.
And a lack of coordination.
Natural gas companies said power outages dropped production. Power producers said natural gas didn't deliver the needed supply. They're both right.
The system we have to be without power for such an extended period of time is unacceptable.
The Texas Railroad Commission regulates natural gas producers, pipelines, and processors. The Public Utility Commission regulates power plants, transmission lines, local distributors, and retailers. They're supposed to work hand in hand.
Do you think Texans deserve an apology from the Public Utility Commission? The fact that you're hesitating.
Lawmakers pressed PUC for answers.
Texans suffered through this event.
Bill Magnus was president for the Electric Reliability Council of Texas at the time, ERCOT.
It's unacceptable.
It was his job to manage the grid. He told lawmakers Texas was 4 minutes, 37 seconds away from catastrophic blackout, meaning no power anywhere for weeks.
Demand that was skyrocketing at the same time that supply was going down the hill.
First, gas well heads froze. Then clouds and snow crippled solar. Wind turbines froze. And when power plants went down, the natural gas side took another crippling blow. Same 2011 problems, left unfixed for a decade.
Oh, here we go. A few photos of the North Distribution Center.
Daniela Silva volunteers with Community Resilience Trust, CRT.
So this was food, hot food that we were giving out.
During the storm, they found hotels for the homeless and offered to help anyone in Austin, anyone they could reach.
There had been a wellness check done, and that an elderly couple had passed away in their home. You're trying all of this work to help people, to literally save people. It feels like you didn't do enough, that you didn't move fast enough. It's like, it was a moment of desperation, like we failed. We failed.
It was a downward spiral where gas failure caused a power failure, caused a bigger gas failure, caused a bigger power failure.
Michael Weber is a professor in energy resources at the University of Texas at Austin.
So if you don't have that first gas failure, you can keep the gas flowing more readily.
Reports show the storm cost Texans $130 billion, but those who sold natural gas made billions. Energy Transfer alone made $2.4 billion off the storm. Federal reports show gas sellers marked up the price of its raw fuel by 500 to 4,000%. No price cap on gas.
One of the most energy abundant spots in the world had an energy shortage. And one of the richest places in the world now is hit with a huge bill that even we can't afford.
Power, unlike natural gas, has a cost cap. But because of the high gas price, ERCOT allowed that power to sell at the max, $9,000 per megawatt hour. It was an incentive to get power on the grid. When the blackout stopped, ERCOT still allowed that max charge to stay for an extra day and a half. $16 billion on the backs of anyone who pays an electric bill.
We got to change the way we look and we think about these things.
Craig Nazer with the Sierra Club Lone Star chapter wanted lawmakers to prioritize energy efficiency, keep costs low.
The extremes both ways are going to get wider. So even though as the temperature gets hotter, cold spells are going to get colder because the extremes are getting wider.
The legislature didn't cover energy efficiency, other than requiring cities to use natural gas. In all, lawmakers passed 24 laws aimed to fix power problems. They learned some ERCOT board leaders didn't even live in Texas, so now a law requires everyone on the board to be a Texas resident. Indebted utility companies can get a state-backed long-term loan instead of sending the bill straight to electricity customers. Now everyone pays over decades. Senate Bill 3 put most of the weight on PUC's shoulders. The commissioners, all new, had to write weatherization
This meeting of the
rules
Public Utility Commission of Texas will come to order to consider
and set
matters.
penalties for their side of power operations.
We implemented more reforms in a shorter amount of time than any other grid in the U.S.
We pressed PUC Chairman Peter Lake about the commission's work.
The market reliability piece is being implemented over time, over the next several years. Most importantly, the operational reliability is in place now.
Here's what that means to you, your bill, and the chance of keeping power. For now, these 2011 federal weatherizing recommendations are a requirement. Anyone under PUC's jurisdiction had to submit a sworn affidavit they would do the work. 8 companies didn't submit. Their fines total $7.5 million. Inspectors checked 324 facilities in December.
What's being done to protect Texan lives?
Part of the reason the grid failed was because the electricity market runs on supply and demand. Companies can charge more when the supply is low. PUC changed that.
That's building in a reliability requirement for retailers to have on-demand electricity for the first time ever. So the retail companies that send you a bill for electricity each month will be for the first time ever responsible for ensuring that that is on-demand electricity.
Instead of paying the market rate when supply is low.
They've never had that responsibility before.
The max rate we paid on the open market during a crisis was $9,000 per megawatt hour. PUC lowered that cap to $5,000. But they don't know the long-run financial impact. Instead of paying top dollar once supply drops too low, power companies now get paid in increments as the supply starts to drop. Lake says it leads to more reliability.
Stay as far away from crisis as possible, so that's more generation sooner.
Lawmakers let natural gas companies get away from having to weatherize this winter, even though natural gas companies had issues before the storm began. Nearly half of the state's power relies on natural gas.
Not all these facilities are the same.
Commissioner Jim Wright is one of 3 commissioners at the Texas Railroad Commission, one of 3 who makes rules to regulate natural gas. The trio didn't create weatherization rules and won't until the power grid is mapped. Only critical areas for natural gas will be required to weatherize. Not everyone, not like PUC's side of electricity. We asked Wright about it. Why couldn't you just say, this is one standard, everybody has to do it, whether you're critical or not?
Well, again, there's already people up in North Texas that have weatherization that they do just because they every year experience more cold weather than people in South Texas. So if I say, hey, you got to do this, this is the definition of weatherization, it's going to be different, I think, geographically for Texas when we go to define and adopt those. And I think that's why mapping is so critical in that.
Wright said everyone they inspected had voluntarily prepped for winter. Their inspections covered 3/4 of all gas storage sites, plus some processing plants and gas pipelines.
Even with the best standards in place, there's going to be outages.
Todd Staples with the Texas Oil and Gas Association lobbies for the oil and gas industry.
Yeah, I think there's a really big misconception about the way oil and gas operators prepare for the winter.
He said most gas wells are unmanned and can take hours to reach. But that's not the only distance problem.
If you want access to natural gas, you need to look at storage.
Specifically storage, he said, closer to populated areas. Storage wasn't an issue during the February storm. Pipelines transport gas from too far away, he said.
The pipeline system here in Texas has to stay pressurized.
Gas loses pressure over distance, so companies use compressors along the route. During the storm, pressure dropped. Usually, either an unmanned wellhead froze or a compressor's electricity got cut.
When the electricity was cut off in a lot of those areas, we didn't have the ability to keep that pressure in the system.
If the gas system had not fallen, we would have had some blackouts, but not as many, and not as bad, and not as long.
Michael Weber is a professor in energy resources at the University of Texas at Austin.
We are putting all the scrutiny and pressure on the power system to winterize the power plants, to do inspections or new regulations or new penalties, that kind of thing, and that's reasonable, but we're not putting the same pressure on the gas system.
Joe wrote to Lake and the other PUC commissioners, told his story.
So all I can do is just be loud and annoying.
Do you think they heard you?
No. I mean, I guess you're here. Yeah. I didn't think that would happen.
We will continue to listen.
We asked Joe if he had any question for the PUC chairman. You can find that question and the response online with this story at KVUE.com. With the KVUE Defenders, I'm Erica Proffer.